Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Castaneda. I work as the project director for IDRC, and this is a new topic for us. We've done a lot with IDRC. We always get suggestions in our reviews to do something related to emotional health or mental health, and so this is we are not experts on that. We're just going to share some practical tips that are good for everybody. And so, do you have time for hobbies? My husband and I coach my 13 to we coach a 13 to 15-year-old baseball league. So that's interesting. But we do have time for hobbies. So reading, crafting, walking, obstacle runs, zoning out on TV are some of the things that we asked participants to put in the chat box, something that they enjoy doing that they feel like it's just good for them. So we're going to talk about today is something called emotional resilience. So like I said, I am not a mental health expert in any way. I'm just going to share what research shows is some just general things that we should all be thinking about. And we'll talk a little bit more about what emotional resilience is. And so it says here, emotional resilience refers to one's ability to adapt to stressful situations and crises. More resilient people are able to roll with the punches and adapt to adversity without lasting difficulties. Less resilient people have a harder time with stress and life changes, both major and minor. So we're going to look at this particular topic and how it relates to how each one of us can have that adaptability, be able to, I feel like in my unit, it's so important because we do so many different things. And if anything, the only constant is that your job lots of times is continually changing. You see things that can be very difficult. You can see things that can be incredibly inspiring. And as far as the word resilience, if I could define a population, it would be the migrant families that we work with. But the idea of emotional resilience and looking at ourselves and how we're each able to really adapt to that. And so if anyone has any comments, feel free to unmute yourself. If you can, I believe you can. And if you have any questions, feel free to put that in. Maybe I may not know the answer, but between all of us, we might have some suggestions and some ideas. And so this, like I said, this is our attempt to really try to look at something that could be helpful for all of us and kind of relate that back to what we're doing. So Janie says she likes to do running. So each one of us have these things that are just good for us to get out and do. And so the kind of going back to this idea of resilience of, some of the people that I have met over the years in the migrant program, some of the kids that we used to do a leadership institute with high school kids, and I would just be amazed at just these difficult situations the kids had gone through and just how tough they were and how much they love their families. And so I think we get a chance to really dip into a world of people that have to be resilient with all that they're up against. And so looking at emotional resilience, what we just talked about, the idea also is that we're able to help ourselves and others the best that we can. And then we know how to reach out for additional help when needed. And so these are kind of best practices for all of us to kind of look at. And we realize that things are not always as simple as, listening to a PowerPoint or a presentation, and that's just going to make you know exactly what to do. I know that everyone has different challenges, and some of them feel like they definitely are not things that are easy just to bend and to be able to do it, but they feel like they might break us. And so I want to make sure that I'm not, that nothing we say that knows that it's a silver bullet for anybody that'll work perfectly. But the idea is hopefully all of these concepts will help all of us in this area. So it says here, sometimes the most difficult part of life challenges is taking steps when we're not sure where they're going to lead and if they're going to help or hinder us. And this can happen in both our personal lives and our work lives. And this idea of change and how hard it is. And a lot of times with change, we don't know what's going to go and what's going to happen and how new things. I feel like the pandemic just threw all of us into this total complete world of, okay, well, I'm supposed to do this, but what's it going to look like? And so, we know that change is going to be constant. And so knowing that challenges are going to be part of our life is one of the key foundational things for this idea of emotional resiliency. It says we sometimes believe I'm going to have this perfect understanding and then I'm going to transform into just what I do. I'm going to know what to do. And sometimes we just have enough to get started. We have a sense of the right direction and we just have to step out and try it. And it says when we use those choices in our lives, whether it's our work life or our personal life, using choices to act responsibly, it says if we can educate our desires in the right way, we'll become what we would like to become, but it often begins by careful contemplation of who we are and what we want in life. And so it says here, the difference between who you are and who you want to be is what we do. And so I think that's, related. I'm not going to relate everything back to migrant ed, but in general, with this idea of sometimes we can be really bogged down and not know where we want to go, but we also don't know really where we want to end up. And this idea that we have to kind of figure out where we want to get to and then take the steps to get there. So one of those things, I used to, the older I get, I feel like it's harder to, those extra pounds can get on there, and you think, okay, you're so many decisions and so many things are like, should I do this or should I do that? And so these decisions that come up over and over and over also directly impact our emotional and our mental health, the kind of things that we dwell on, the kind of things that we think about. It says we have to decide how to act, what to do, how to respond, and when to react. So how to act, what we need to do, how to respond, and when to react. And then it's really our choice, but do we take that choice seriously? Are we really thinking about the importance of the choice that we make? So it says challenges or unexpected changes may seem unfair. We may respond in ways that are unproductive. So this idea of emotional resiliency, these challenges comes up, these things that we're not sure what's going to happen. Do we become unproductive and blame others, make excuses? Do we rebel against things? Do we complain? Do we find fault? Do we doubt? Do we give up? Do we procrastinate? Do we get angry? Do we indulge in self-pity? Do we allow fear to rule or self-justify? And so this, I think sometimes with our children, we can say, well, hey, you decide how you want to act. And then as an adult, it can be a lot harder if we're offended by something or, just deciding how we're going to react to something. And so it says our thoughts influence our emotions. Your thoughts are important. How you talk to yourself, how you think about things impact how you feel and how resilient you can be. Your thoughts also play a great role in how you interact with others and perceive the world around you. And so I think sometimes it's hard to see in ourselves. We can see things in other people, but we may not see, what we're dwelling on that might, negatively impact us. So it says oftentimes we might focus our thoughts on what is wrong or what is negative. Inaccurate thinking patterns lead us to see the worst possible outcomes to a situation. These distorted thoughts cause us to feel bad about ourselves and others. We all experience negative thoughts, but sometimes we get stuck in them and don't see the pattern and don't see, how it's going to impact. So just kind of think about that in your own life. I think these are good examples. So this is coming from two different courses kind of on emotional health. And they had this worksheet that says, when you think of inaccurate thinking patterns, like you think, okay, what does that mean? So you can have this all or nothing approach, seeing something or someone as all good or all bad, looking for phrases with words like always or never. I always say the wrong thing. So you're thinking, are these your internal thoughts that you're telling yourself? Mislabeling, taking something that had happened and making a broad or incorrect statement. The relationship ended, so I'm not good enough. Jumping to conclusions, interpreting other thoughts or assuming the worst possible outcome. I bet everyone is laughing at me. Personalizing. So there's all these things that we can do, all or nothing. Emotional reasoning, judging a situation based on how you feel. I feel guilty, I must have done something bad. Overgeneralization, when you apply one experience and generalize it to all experiences. I did poorly on this assignment, so why should I stay in class? Like one of my boys, I've got three boys. I've got a 17, a 15, and an 11-year-old. And one of them had a class. He's taken an honors biology class, and he did really well in the class most of the time. And then he just didn't do part of his assignments and turn it in late. And so he was like, I hate this teacher. I said, you've not hated her the whole time. Something triggered this, and now you've decided that you just can't stand this lady. Sometimes we can, one situation can completely change our thoughts on something, although the sum of the experience has not been a bad thing. You can have a negative mental filter, focusing on negative details and dwelling on it instead of looking at other things past that. Discounting the positive, rejecting all positive experiences because they don't feel like they count. So it doesn't matter if my daughter ate breakfast, she threw a tantrum after tantrum the rest of the day. So we just focus on the negative. Magnification, exaggerating your weaknesses or comparing to other strengths. I barely cook dinner for my family, and when I do, it's nothing like hers. Or should statements, telling things how, telling yourself how things should be. So are these part of our, regular thinking patterns? Are we able to kind of change our thought process? So maybe in the chat box, if you guys want to share about this, they are part of our problems with thinking patterns, they say, is that we need to identify what our triggers are. What is it that's something that that makes us, just kind of puts us out of, just out of balance. There are certain things that cause these inaccurate trigger, thoughts. So a trigger could be you go to a party where you don't know anyone and you suddenly feel like overwhelmed. You feel like people are looking at you, feel stressed because there's so many people around. They're pressured to be someone that they want to be. So you're automatically uncomfortable. And so maybe you reacted by just going somewhere else and just trying to get away from them and try not to talk to people. And in the end, you had a really bad experience. Or could you identify, hey, this is one of my triggers. I usually don't feel that comfortable. So I'm going to invite a friend to go with me. Or I'm going to, hey, when I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to try to get out of my comfort zone and talk to somebody. So does anyone have something that they know is a specific trigger to you? Like maybe, like, for example, if I'm working a whole bunch and then, one of my kids starts making tons of noise or something, I may, there may be certain times where I'm like, that may be something that sets me off. It just, part of what they say that we have to have these is understanding those accurate thinking patterns, like not dwelling on one particular thing. So if anyone has one of those, oh, Darren says directed Zoom questions. So right now, your trigger is do not ask me questions and don't make me answer anything. We all have things that specifically set us off, and we may not even know what they are. But part of what they say is having that real understanding of, better being able to try to control our emotional health is understanding what is your trigger. So one comment says feeling overwhelmed, but just feeling like you have too much to do, just not quite knowing how to control that. So if anyone else wants to feel comfortable enough to put that on there, that might be something that just to see, you have to identify specifically, replying to emails. What is it that specifically unreplied email? So that in your email box, you have all these things you're supposed to answer, and it's just kind of frustrating. It just kind of sets you off. It says hearing or seeing a negative message about me or someone I love, being around someone you don't get along with. We all have these particular things that really kind of get us, and so part of our emotional health, they say, is to identify those triggers, see how you normally react, and then see how you can change that and try to respond and see if that helps. So then kind of on a different area is looking at our bodies here. It says, this is kind of an interesting quote. It says, each eye has an auto-focusing lens. Nerves and muscles control two eyes to make a single three-dimensional image. Each ear is connected to compact equipment designed to convert sound waves into audible tones. Your heart is an incredible pump. It has 4 delicate valves that open and close more than 100,000 times a day. Think of the body's defense system. It perceives pain. It generates antibodies. The body renews its own outdated cells and regulates the level of its own vital ingredients. And there are so many amazing attributes to our body that we all have. But sometimes we may not even, realize why we feel some way, or we want to do something different. So it talks about the importance of regular exercise. It says regular exercise can greatly benefit your emotional health. Physical activity stimulates your brain, releases chemicals that help with your emotions and your ability to see situations clearly. So taking time to be active can leave you feeling happier, more relaxed, and less anxious. Physical activity can also be an opportunity to use your body and connect with family and friends in a fun social setting. So for some people, you may have put in the chat box that this is what really makes you feel good. And for other people, it may be your trigger where you're saying, hey, I've gained too much weight and I feel so bad and I need to do this or this. But the idea that each one of us should be taking some time to do regular, to participate in regular exercise. Studies all show just how important that is. And so then you say, okay, I'm going to exercise, the need for sleep. If you want to put it in your chat box, what do you think is your average amount of sleep that you get each night? If you feel comfortable putting that in, unless that's your trigger of me asking these questions. It says the need for sleep and rest is often forgotten. Fatigue is a common enemy of us all. So slow down, rest up, replenish, and refill. Physicians promise us that if we do not take the time to be well, we will most assuredly take time later on to be ill. So looking at the box, let's see, we've got 4 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours, 7 hours, 7 hours, some 4 hours, 6 to 7, 5 to 6. So we're kind of all over the place. Some of us are getting 4, some are getting 5. I am a big sleeper. Like if I don't get sleep, I just have to get to bed by like 9, 9:30, 10, and I get up about 5, but I have to get that sleep or I just don't function as well and I get sick quicker. And so for me, that's something I can very much see that if I don't get good sleep, then So this is an area that I can thrive in. I can get my sleep. But some of you have said 4 hours, and then some people have problems sleeping. And so that can be a whole nother challenge where you may want to sleep, but you can't sleep. But the research again shows that we need exercise, we need sleep. Quality sleep can protect your mental health, physical health, quality of life, and safety. When you're tired, you might find it hard to make decisions, solve your problems, control your emotions and your behavior, and handle change. So some of us, it may literally that we just need more sleep and we'll feel better, and it will change a lot of things. And so the idea of really looking at that and seeing why you're not getting enough sleep, or like they've done research on just the teens and mental health, and how much less sleep kids are getting now, and how important it is to get, there are studies that show how sleep will protect you from dementia and all of these different things at different ages. And so you want to make sure that you're kind of, if you can get some sleep. It says maybe you feel pressure to keep up with the fast-paced world. You may be in a sense of phase that seems overwhelming, such as raising young children, caring for a sick loved one. You may have lots of emails and lots of things to keep up with work. You can also be affected by emotional changes that cause you to feel tired and want to sleep longer than is needed. And then the opposite is you think, okay, well, I'm going to sleep all that I need. And then you wind up feeling worse if you're getting too much sleep. And so it's kind of finding that balance of making sure that you're getting enough of what you need. This is an obvious one, personal hygiene, but sometimes it says prioritizing, doing those things that make us feel, clean. You're bathing, you're brushing your teeth, you're keeping your clothes clean. I used to find it's kind of a dumb thing, like getting up to go to work. I wanted to change and get ready for work and feel like I was like in the mindset for going to work. Because, for me, I just can't, like, maybe some people love for Zoom, that you're in your pajamas. Like, I have to feel like mentally it helps me get ready for work if I'm like getting ready for work. And so that's me. Maybe that is exactly your trigger and you don't want to do that. It's the beauty of not having, working from a home office or whatever. But the idea of hygiene being very important. Fueling our bodies. It says make sure to drink plenty of clean water throughout the day. Eat enough of the right food to fill your body so that you have the energy to accomplish your daily tasks. These are just like common sense, but at the same time, we all can mess up on this. We all can know that we need to get sleep. We know we need to exercise. We know that we need to kind of think out why we're responding in certain ways, but it's sometimes cumulatively hard to remember all of these things and to do them. So it talks about, in general, consider eating more vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes, and nuts. Also consider reducing refined sugar, salt, sweetened beverages, and saturated fat. So these are things that we know, but then are we able to do these things? So it says your body experiences strong emotions. Becoming emotionally resilient requires you to acknowledge, accept, and respond to your emotions. So sometimes you're thinking, why am I feeling this way? What is it that I'm really, really trying to, how do I need to respond? What is it that I'm actually feeling? This is in a healthy way. Emotions are a normal part of our experience here. Sometimes your emotions may be strong and it may be challenging to respond to them. When you allow your emotions to decide your behaviors, you surrender to your emotions rather than choosing how you want to respond to something. So the first step is really managing, being aware of your emotions. So it says here an importance of sense of humor. Sense of humor is an escape valve for the pressures of life. So this idea of being able to kind of laugh at yourself, laugh at those things that, not take everything so serious, and then also be able to kind of add some levity, how important that is. So there are a couple comments. It says we may know that these things are important, but we aren't able to do these things because our culture or jobs may not facilitate a healthy lifestyle. That is exactly sometimes, one of those challenges. Like I personally, like I just said, I have the 3 kids. I always wanted to have my kids with me when they were younger. Like I didn't want to take them to a sitter. It was just something that I personally wanted to do. And so I asked my boss when I first started working once I had my first son, if I could have him and still get my job done. And she said, well, we'll see how you do. And if you can do it, then that's fine. And so I would wind up working 12 hours because my child would need to be fed, or he would be, he would be kind of loud, or he just needed me. But through the time I wound up having all of my kids, I worked from a home office. When I traveled, I'd have someone watch them, or I'd have my mom bring them and she'd take care of them. But for me, it was one of those things that I really struggled with, like wanting to work, but still wanting to spend time with my kids. And so I feel like sometimes we all have things that, maybe you feel like you struggle to make sure that you're working the amount of hours, the flexibility that you need in migrant ed, but that means that you don't have a set time to exercise every day. Or like, I'll think, okay, I need to do this, but if I do that, it's going to take away from my time for my kids. And so I need to make sure that I rearrange. And in the end, I may spend the least amount of time doing something that I really need to because I'm trying to fit everything in. And so talks about the importance of self-care. Like I said, I'm not an expert in all of these things. I just am good about trying to look at the big picture on how all these things go together. And I can remind myself, but like the comment that was just there, we may know it's important, but we know the areas that we're kind of struggling with. So it says, when you face challenges, you need to do all that you can to take care of yourself. That means using the resources that you have in your life to support you with whatever challenges you're facing. So some of these things, maybe when you're just like, hey, I need a break, maybe you take a nap, maybe you visit with a friend, maybe you slow down. My husband is like one of the best listeners in the world, and I'm probably one of the biggest talkers in the world. And he's super good. Things are black and white to him. When it's gray to me, it doesn't make sense. He'll just say, well, try this or try this. And I think that's a good idea. And so whoever it is in your life that gives you good advice, seek them out, visit with them, slow down. Sometimes it's just taking a shower, a bath, exercise, take a walk. Sometimes it's just changing your perspective, taking a look at those things that you're grateful for. Enjoy a nice meal, dance, sing, read a book, listen to music. Some of you said like running and knitting, whatever it is, take the time to do those things that you enjoy that would probably be considered by most of us a hobby or something that we would do in our time that we finally had a little extra time and something we would enjoy doing. So this is another interesting kind of shift. I think Tracy's on here, and when we were working on the years ago when we were doing the ACEs stuff about looking at kind of how ACEs affect, we were looking at stress and anxiety, and these were words that you didn't hear. Stress you heard, but anxiety you didn't hear like you do now. Like my 11-year-old was talking about a friend in school that said, well, my anxiety is acting up. And he said, Mom, it sounds almost like an animal. Like it's just my, being bad. And so he's like, how does that work? Or what does that work? I feel like words exist in our society that didn't exist before in a way that we're talking a lot different about things. We're looking at things. It says, stress and anxiety are normal parts of life. These words describe ways the brain and the body respond to any demand, such as a problem at work, a test at school, or an important decision. Normal amounts of stress and anxiety can help you focus, reach your goals, and protect your body. For example, if you have some stress about your job, you will likely come to work prepared and focused on your task. So normal amounts of stress and anxiety actually make us better. Stress and anxiety can help you keep alive, but feeling stress and anxiety too often or for too long can cause significant problems and lead to mental illness. So just having some stress and having some anxiety may not may not be a problem, but having too much. And so I know I associate, Tracy, if you want to make a comment, you can feel free to make a comment. They have some resources specifically on stress and anxiety.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I was just messaging you. So we have mental health lessons around depression, stress, anxiety. They're in English and Spanish. And we also have our personal wellness modules that hit the same topics. And they're really focused on professional learning for service providers and recruiters. And they're on our website.
Do you want to put the link to that maybe in just a second once you get it? You put the link that way if people want to check that out, they've got.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So it says here, if you're dealing with too much stress and anxiety, you might get sick often, have headaches, feel angry, have drastic changes in your appetite, or experience a lack of focus. And again, this is another thing that you have to identify when that is. Like sometimes people know exactly when they're stressed. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're not seeing it and others around them can. So you may start to feel overwhelmed by your job, or you may not want to go to work because you fear something bad will happen or that you'll not be good enough. These are signs that you're feeling distress or debilitating levels of stress and anxiety. So recruiting, one of my least favorite things to do, but I also know it's very important, is when there's a big group of workers and I'm walking out by myself and I'm thinking, oh crap, I got to talk to everybody. And in my mind, I have to think, all right, okay, you can get through this, just go. And I have to just talk myself up to just do it. And then as soon as I start, I'm okay. But it's that walking up of like, here we go again. That has never become something that I love, now I thoroughly enjoy talking to people and, talking to the workers, but I don't like that sense of they're freaked out of why I'm coming. I'm not sure who I'm going to talk to. So that's one of those things that I never look forward to. I can knock on a house, it doesn't bother me at all. But walking up to, a farm in the field, I always think, okay, as soon as I get started and I can get permission to get in, I'm over that. But that's something that I have to work. So that's a normal stress for me. That's not something that I can't deal with. I can deal with it. But I feel like, sometimes in our jobs, there are things that just really make us uncomfortable, but we still have to kind of push through. And then there's things that can be, above where, more than, in our personal lives, or things that we feel like is more than we can handle. So then the thought is, what are we becoming? We easily can be overcome by the routine and mundane matters of living, sleeping, eating, dressing, working, playing, exercising, doing these extra activities. But it says ultimately what we become is the result of the sum total of our daily pursuits over the course of a lifetime. But that's kind of an interesting idea. Like who we are, when we get, later on in life is what we related to all the things that we do right now. So if we want good relationships with our families or good relationships with those that we work with, it's all of those daily things that we do with others that helps us kind of get where we want to go. But sometimes we're not even thinking about where we want to go with things. So stress and inaccurate thinking patterns can dominate and distort our thoughts, and we may find ourselves not being fully present. Our attention can wander. We may check out and focus on things other than what's happening around us. And then there's this idea of mindfulness. It says, however, mindfulness is a skill that will help us become more emotionally resilient. It is a paying attention to what your body is telling you right now, what's happening right now. It can help reduce stress and anxiety and increase our sense of well-being and confidence. Mindfulness can also help us avoid being overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's happening around us. So sometimes mindfulness for people, like my kids in school, they hear this all the time and they don't even like this word. They're like, no, no, no. They make us sit there and think about our thoughts. And I feel like sometimes it's just the awareness of yourself of like, you get mad about something and you're thinking it out, like, what's this coming? Why am I so mad? What could possibly be the reason of what this person is, why they reacted to me in that way? It's kind of making sense of it all and really thinking it and trying to understand. And that can be done in a lot of different ways. And so I know you can all Google, any of these things and learn a lot more about it. But the idea of really looking, like it says, a skill that helps us become more emotionally resilient, paying attention to what your body is telling you when it's happening right then and now, and trying to reduce any of that stress and anxiety. So for me, walking up to that field, I'm thinking, oh crap, I know I hate this. I'm nervous right now because I hate this. Okay, I can do this. All right, you can do this. And then walking myself through that, and I can get there and do it. And so it happens over and over. It never gets easier for me. And so for other people, that may not even be, maybe that's one of my triggers. I don't know. But one of my advantages is when they look at me and they're like, oh, no hablo inglés. So, they get nervous. Then I can start talking in Spanish. And then they're like, oh, ella habla español. She speaks. That's my moment where I'm over my uncomfortableness. I now can proceed. And so I guess in understanding this, to me, it means just really being able to work through what you're feeling, why you're feeling, and how you can overcome that. There was a comment. It says, a normal stress in work for me is when I recruit with another coworker that is more fluent in a second language. I feel intimidated. This is actually decreased by effectiveness because of my own inaccurate opinion of my own abilities. So that's a perfect example. Like, in your mind, like, I'm probably being way harder on myself than this person is ever even noticing. Like, I remember one time as I got older, I felt like I had, under my eyes, I had like bags or something. And I remember telling somebody, well, I have these bags. And like, I never noticed that. And I think, well, when I look in the mirror, that's all that I see. Like, we see ourselves different. And so we cause ourselves extra stress sometimes by just our own view of what we see. So thanks for sharing that. That's a good example of, something that you wind up putting on yourself because you wonder what people think. And if anyone else has one of those that they'd be willing to share, feel free to do that. The other example is here. I mean, we definitely do not want to just, like we said, just go through and say, hey, this is what you do and this will make you happy. And this is all so complex, but it says understanding the difference between sadness and depression. Sometimes we have experiences that, cause different emotions, and sometimes we may not be able to make sense of everything and understand where everything's coming. So sadness and depression are described as feelings of sorrow, unhappiness, and grief, and they are a normal part of our experience here, right now. Sadness and depression can come through difficulties resulting from rejection, from interpersonal relationships, disappointments, and other pains. They're difficult, yet they're essential for us to be able to grow. But then there are actually, like major depressive disorder or severe depression is different. It's an emotional state or condition that affects our thinking, our emotions, our perceptions, and our behaviors. And so major depression, depressive disorder can occur without a clear explanation for its cause, or it can result from unhealthy reactions to painful events. When we experience severe depression, we often feel numb or deadened to our emotions. We may have feelings of shame, self-blame, or self-hatred, all of which are likely to interfere with how we function every day. Severe depression also interferes with our ability to deal positively with challenges as they arrive. So again, these are the kind of things that you seek out professionals and people that can actually help you with these things and help you navigate through this. But sometimes we may not understand, is this depression or is this sadness, or and so understanding kind of the depth of these things are helpful. So emotional, it's these factors that can lead to emotional challenges. Like maybe we're feeling perfectly fine, and then there's physical factors that can affect us. And so maybe it's our genetics. Maybe we had a serious illness. Maybe the diet and lack of physical activity. Maybe your use of, misuse of illegal drugs or medications. Weathers. Sometimes it's just the change in weather and chemical or hormonal changes. Then there's psychological things that can affect us. Major events and life transitions, death or loss, abuse, social. We see during the pandemic, they said people have been lonelier now than they've been, in many years. They associate the fact that, being isolated. And there's, social interactions with others can create strong emotions such as conflict, loneliness, and isolation, social pressures, betrayal, or broken trust. So it's so complex. It's not like, all of a sudden, you're trying to do the mindfulness and you're understanding exactly why you feel about it, everything. There's many different factors that can help us, feel in certain ways, but we can also try to identify and figure out what that is. So symptoms of depression: constantly feeling sad, helpless, hopeless, or worthless, little energy and motivation, change in appetite or weight loss or gain, trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up, loss of interest in activities that used to be enjoyable, difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions, and then thoughts about death and suicide. So these are all major warnings of things that you really want to see if you're feeling that way to try to get some help. So it also says ways to connect or find support. Call a friend who is a great listener, ask someone to check in with you, or choose to check in with someone each day. Go for a walk. They talk about with kids, like over time, that the current generation of kids has just not spent as much time outside. They're just, we all know with phones and all the things that distractions, how important it is to just get outside. It says write down meaningful memories or things that when you felt good, and try to, really think about those kind of things. So there's a lot of things that we can do. Again, it's like cumulatively trying to figure out if, what areas we can improve on. It says ways to connect or find support: schedule an appointment with a licensed medical professional or a mental health therapist if you feel like you need that. Join a support group or social group with similar interests. So maybe it's just getting out with a group of, maybe you like to run, and so you try to join in with some other people that do that, so you can do more of those things that you really enjoy. Reach out to someone else who may be going through a hard time. And so then dealing with grief is a totally different thing than you have. It says giving yourself permission. I know each one of us at some point will lose somebody, or that really means a lot to us. It says give yourself permission to feel, cry, and experience whatever you may or may not be feeling as part of the process. Take care of yourself, eat healthy, get enough sleep, try to exercise, identify and acknowledge the feelings you're having as normal and healthy. Set realistic expectations about how much time you may need, and take one step at a time. Recognize that feelings of happiness, joy, and peace are not disloyal to whoever you've lost. Express your thoughts and feelings by writing about your loss and your hope for the future. And then if these feelings become overwhelming, considering help from professionals. So there's all these different areas of this idea of emotional resilience that can be really complex. And so part of it, all of us at some point have had, some of us may have a harder time with anger. Some of us, this may not be something that really is one of those things that really impacts you. But they always say if we're feeling angry, we have to make sure that we are able to identify the real problem of why you're angry, and then try to decide on, how you're going to act, and then kind of go forward with that, and then try to solve your problems and try to figure out what the best solutions are. And so sometimes anger is a major issue for people. I think probably one of the maddest times in my life that I've ever been, when I first started working in migrant ed. I bought a new Dodge 1500 truck that was stick shift. It was $1,000 cheaper for a stick shift. And at the time I thought $1,000, I can learn to drive stick shift for $1,000, no problem. So I actually, when I started, they hired me on a Wednesday and I had to drive 2 hours away on the following Monday. And I bought this vehicle on the Thursday and I had a weekend to learn to drive stick. And I probably would have paid a whole bunch more money to not learn it after that weekend. But I drove from my house about an hour and a half to where our main office was, just thinking, please, green light, green light, green light. But about a month later, I still didn't feel like I'd really mastered it. And I was pulling into an apartment complex to recruit. And it was one of those ones with in and out. So you're only supposed to go in and only supposed to go out. And I stalled my truck right there. And this guy behind me was like, "Hey, you, do you not know how to drive that truck?" And I thought I was going to get out of that truck and beat the heck out of him. Like I've never been so mad in my life. Like I thought this is road rage, like beyond, because I was so frustrated and I couldn't, this was already stressful. I was already trying to figure out how to do this job. I didn't know where I was going. I was always, didn't know if it was going to be uphill most of the way. And so I remember just being absolutely completely irate and thinking, this is ridiculous. This is over a stupid thing. But the emotions that I felt, I thought I needed to just get it out, pull it out of the way, and finally was able to do it. But I think sometimes we have, logic would say like, okay, this is a stupid reaction, just calm down and just get the truck in gear and move on. But, a lot of times things are not logical, things that doesn't quite make sense. And my trigger was I didn't know how to drive this stupid truck. And I'd been getting better, but I was still messing up. And so, whatever our challenges are, what's our real problem? How do we need to act on this? And what's the best way that we can react? And sometimes it's so fast that you don't have any time to think about it. You're just reacting. But if this is something that you feel like you really need to work on, this is a good way to really kind of think about some of those things. It says everyone experiences anger. There are countless reasons why we feel angry. We can't always control angry feelings, and it's easier to feel justified in our anger. Like I completely felt justified in being mad. I didn't get out. I didn't yell at him. I just, imagined all the things that I could do. It says we may even feel better in the moment after expressing anger in aggressive ways, but expressing anger doesn't help us feel better in the long term, and it results in strained relationships, even physical illness, financial loss, and physical damage to ourselves and others. So really trying to figure out how to harness these different emotions and be able to react to them. And so, I don't know how well these would have worked in that particular thing. I didn't do anything crazy, but it says behaviors that heat anger: making accusations, arguing while angry, yelling, screaming, shouting, dwelling on hurt feelings, planning revenge, engaging in any form of violence. I feel like we're all probably way better at our jobs to control our anger than we might be at our, in our homes or something. And so I think some of those things that we're able to use in the public is also good to always remember with those that, that we live with. It says skills that cool anger: counting to 10 or higher, non-competitive exercise. I think it's funny there. So non-competitive, they're suggesting meditation, prayer, and relaxation, going outside, choosing helpful thoughts, calming music. I find it very interesting that throughout all of this, it mentions a lot of the same things. Like it's good for your emotional health to get out and, get outside and spend some time outside to do exercise. And then it says here, to overcome anger, there's some things that are really good, such as exercise, such as going outside, such as music. So there are those things that we may just consider our hobbies that are actually very good to help us just overall feel good. And so, because much of the advice on these different areas are things that, that come up over and over again. So as things happen in our lives, we may feel anger, but how we are able to choose how to respond to this feeling, to become angry or to become charitable, kind, and generous. A situation was described where an athletically talented young man tried out for and made a sports team. The first day of practice, the coach had the young man play against another player while the team watched. When he missed an easy shot, he became angry and stomped and whined. The coach walked over him and said, "You pull a stunt like that again and you'll never play for my team." For the next 3 years, he never lost control again. Years later, he reflected back on this incident, and he realized that the coach had taught him a life-changing principle that anger can be controlled. And so it says here, comments: we should use the same cordiality basically be just as cordial with our family as we are in other social settings. And it says if you don't take these breaks, then anger is normalized. Yeah, you don't want it to become something that really controls you, and that's the kind of person that you become because you don't get a break from these kind of emotions. So then there's, one way you can choose to respond is through humor. Being able to laugh at yourself or find humor in a situation helps you better cope with life's unexpected frustrations and disappointments. Uplifting humor can help you improve your attitude, relationships, and health. This kind of humor does not offend or embarrass others. Like my three boys are super good at coming up with humor that can completely, embarrass the other one. And so you think sometimes with those that you care about the most, what bothers them the most. And so you can get to them as quick, really quickly. And the idea that you're being gracious in your humor, you're not doing this at the expense of somebody else. So happy is, it says, so many of us make a great fuss of matters of small consequence. So we're easily offended. It says happy is the man or woman who can brush aside the offending remarks of another and just go on your way. And so I think that that's probably a life challenge for all of us. It says humor is my go, though others are often confused at what I think is funny. So yeah, that you have your own joke with the. So then there's the idea of listening. It says, part of us, for us to have, this idea of emotional resilience is we also need to learn how to become good listeners. And so it says, one, when we're talking to other people, focus on the speaker's words and body language. Don't interrupt. Don't look or use your phone. And I think this is also good for relationship building of just, getting to know others. Number two, appreciate, look at the speaker, use small words like yes or okay. Thank them if you're talking, if it seems appropriate. Mentions too, good listeners, you're able to kind of repeat what they say. You're able to kind of show them that you're learning. And if it's something in a situation too that you're trying to walk through something or work through something, you're asking, making sure that you understand what they're saying, and you listen and wait for the answer. So again, this would be appropriate depending on the situation that you're at, but all of us should be able to be good good listeners. And the idea of relationships, that whatever it says here, whether you whatever you believe in, that your relationships can be helpful. Healthy relationships can help your physical, emotional, spiritual health, whatever it is. All of that can be strengthened. Our families and friends can love us and provide support and encouragement and honest feedback we need to successfully cope with life challenges. So sometimes they'll say things that really you don't feel like you're ready to hear, but that feedback can be really important to kind of change course or to see things that you might not be able to see in yourself. So as far as building relationships, it's taking time to create quality relationships matters more than quantity. My dad would always say, if I could count my friends on my hand, like good friends, then I'm a lucky man. And I think sometimes in our world now, you say, oh, but I have 4,000 friends on Facebook. That when you look at the true friends that you have, they may have been people that you haven't even talked to for a bit, but that if you needed something that they would be there, and they're the kind of people that when you connect back with them, it seems like you never stop talking to them. Just taking time to create quality relationships matters more than the quantity. We will find that we'll get more joy in life as we develop close relationships with a few people we trust rather than having many, many superficial relationships. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of more friends, but we should not assume having more friends equals more happiness. And so you can kind of see that the sphere of what you need around you is going to be different from everyone. Someone may have 10 really good friends and someone else may have 2. It doesn't matter, but the idea is, do you have people around you that can support you and that care about you and that you are able to do the same for them? So it says here, part of another key to this is really being genuinely interested in other people. Learn what other people love or enjoy, even if you don't have the same interests. Smile. Happiness does not depend on what's happening around you, but rather how you respond to your circumstances. The smiles are free and you can give that away and make others feel better. Remember people's name. I think this is interesting because I can always remember faces, but I'm not as good with names. And right now we're coaching one of my boys' baseball teams, and the other coach calls me Jennifer. And it makes me think, okay, he even wrote the schedule of we're playing against Jennifer's team. And I'm like, no, my name is Jessica. So sometimes we don't like it when someone messes our name up, but we may not take the time to get to know someone else's name as much as we should. Be a good listener, encourage other people to talk about themselves. People feel appreciated when someone listens to them. The easiest way to have someone talk to you is to become a good listener and to try sincerely to make others feel important. The golden rule is to treat other people how you'd like to be treated. So these are things that we all know. These are things that, but like you said, cumulatively, we have to kind of put them all together. and make sure that we have the ability to communicate with others. And so this is kind of an interesting point that had in one of the courses that says, when you're communicating and you're upset, you should use I messages. So the example of when you're talking to your spouse, your partner, whoever you're with, saying you never listen to anyone and you're not really listening to me now. Or the difference of I feel discouraged when I don't think I'm understood. Keeping eye contact helps me feel like you care. There are two different feelings on that conversation. Or you're so inconsiderate and thoughtless for missing dinner and not calling. Or I feel neglected when you miss dinner without calling. I also feel worried that something may have happened to you. Two total different feelings, and just how we respond and how we frame things when we're upset. If anyone has any comments, feel free to unmute yourself and make those. So it says using I messages can help you state your concerns, feelings, and needs in a manner that it's easier for the listener to hear and understand. An I message focuses on your feelings and experiences rather than your perspective of what the other person has failed to do. And so kind of an interesting way to frame it, to not just put that blame on someone else. A few more thoughts here. It says, regardless of your best intentions, it's easy to say things that are not very helpful while trying to help someone through difficult times. But this should not scare you away from continuing to try to be helpful. Be sensitive to the feelings of those you're trying to help, taking care to not say or do anything that minimizes their pain or difficulty. And all of us know people that may give you a compliment, but they'll be like, oh, you look really good. You look like you lost a lot of weight. And you think, okay, you may not understand, or that may not be a bad compliment, but then sometimes there's like loaded things. And so an example of, something that might be helpful, something bad happens to someone and you say, you can decide whether you think this is helpful or not helpful. Someone says everything happens for a reason. That may or may not be what someone needs to hear. Just look on the bright side. That may or may not be. So sometimes we have to think of the comments that we say and whether it's the kind of thing that will make someone feel better or feel worse. And so kind of interesting to just kind of think about how we talk. The idea still in being good listeners and building those relationships is knowing how to listen, knowing how to understand. It says you may need to ask compassionate questions to better understand what the person is feeling. Do your best to understand where they're coming from. Accept their feelings. Don't try to change or say, hey, well, you should feel this way or this way. Just really, it says here, be careful not to encourage unhealthy or harmful thinking patterns, but also understanding that someone may feel some way about something that you might in the same situation never feel that way, but knowing that that's a difference in how they feel. Express compassion, and then show support. So this is, here it says you can validate a person by saying, hey, I understand you feel disrespected, or you feel hopeless, or you feel kind of validating those feelings that they have in those conversations. And then again, this is where it gets complicated. Sometimes no matter what you do, you're just going to have to be able to endure through certain things. If you have a loved one with emotional health issues, you might be so focused on taking care of that person that you may forget to take care of yourself. There's help and support. Support groups can be family members, can be friends, but you want to make sure that you have ways to help. So you may say, hey, I'm doing fine, but if I didn't have to do this or this, but sometimes it's just, there are things that you cannot control. It says reach out to trusted friends, healthcare professionals for your help, for yourself and for your loved one. And the support of your family and friends can have a positive impact on that, those serious social and emotional health issues. So I thought this was an interesting thought. It says, one example to deal with your setbacks, these challenges that we have, is to compare them to like you're taking a trip to a neighboring town. On your way, you experience a flat tire. Do you start your trip from the beginning to fix the tire? No. You find a way to fix it where you are and you continue on your journey. Similarly, when you experience a setback, you may feel like your progress is erased and you have to start over, but that is not true. You can always find ways to fix a problem where you are and move forward. Additionally, setbacks can even show you places that need to improve. And so I think that's good advice for all of us. And so it says our business in life is not to get ahead of others, but to get ahead of ourselves, to break down our own record, to outstrip our yesterdays by today, to bear our trials more beautifully than we ever dreamed we could, to give as we've never given, to do our work with more force and a finer finish than ever. This is the true objective. So I'm gonna stop recording because I feel like I'm gonna stop recording right here.